The 1980s were a wild time for cinema, with a mix of blockbuster hits, cult classics, and some downright bizarre entries. While the decade churned out plenty of forgettable flicks, it also produced some real gems, movies that have stood the test of time and still hold up today. Quentin Tarantino has a particular soft spot for the 80s, and his list of must-watch films from the era is pure gold. Here are a few 80s movies that Tarantino himself would nod in approval of. One of Tarantino's favorite 80s films is the 1983 neo-noir thriller Breathless, starring Richard Gere. Breathless tells the story of the forbidden love between a petty criminal and an architecture student. Tarantino called Jim McBride movie the coolest ever made, saying, "Here's a movie that indulges completely all my obsessions: comic books, rockabilly music, and movies."
You love me. Now say it.
It doesn't matter if I love you. It's wrong for us.
Breathless.
Another favorite of Tarantino's is Michael Mann's crime thriller, Manhunter, the first film adaptation of the Hannibal Lecter novels. Starring William Peterson, the film follows a former FBI criminal profiler who returns to work to hunt down a dangerous serial killer. Manhunter is unique for its visual style, which influenced Tarantino's own cinematography.
This is what the subject's teeth look like.
William, you're gonna make yourself sick or get yourself killed.
Starring Jeff Bridges, Rosanna Arquette, and Andy Garcia, 8 Million Ways to Die tells the story of a former sheriff's deputy who tries to stop a drug ring and human trafficking crimes being covered up by a private gambling club. Tarantino explained in the podcast that 8 Million had production issues, including the producers taking the movie away from Hal Ashby. As a result, he couldn't edit the movie properly, and the cast publicly bashed the movie in support of Ashby. The movie certainly feels that way, but Tarantino still says it's one of the best films of the 80s.
What about Angel Maldonado?
What about him?
Did she see him? Was she seeing him?
Why don't you ask Angel?
Maldonado deals in keys.
All I know is Angel's been trying to get a chance to go into business.
There's a dead body, an ex-cop who's a friend of a pimp. I hate money, man.
Flesh and Blood is an epic historical movie that does not shy away from the brutality and immorality of its time. Italy, the year is 1501. A group of mercenaries are betrayed by the lord who hired them. The mercenaries, led by Rutger Hauer's character, intend to take revenge by kidnapping the lord's beloved son. Quentin Tarantino has often mentioned that Flesh and Blood is one of his all-time favorite films, especially for its gritty realism and intense violence. He's talked about it with Robert Rodriguez in the Directors on Directors series, pointing out how the film's bold approach to storytelling really stuck with him. If anything influenced Tarantino's love of wild genre mashups, it's Near Dark, a neo-Western horror that follows a regular Midwestern guy who gets mixed up with Southern vampires who roam across America in stolen cars. In a 2015 interview discussing movies and the Oscars with Bret Easton Ellis, Tarantino referred to himself as the hugest fan of Near Dark and said he followed Bigelow's career for decades following the film.
$3 short for a bus ticket home. You help me out?
What are you on?
Believe me, I told you.
Just don't think of it as killing. Evening. Don't think at all. It's just something that you do night after night. It's only ever a question of how.
I'm nervous. I would be too if I were you.
Tarantino's love for Orientalist motifs in his films was influenced not only by Kurosawa, but also by the 1980s American pop culture's obsession with such themes. Year of the Dragon follows a detective played by Mickey Rourke as he tries to stop the criminal activities of the Chinese triads in New York City. Tarantino has praised this film as one of his favorites, naming its climactic train track shootout as one of his favorite killer movie moments in 2004, remarking that you forget to breathe during it.
I got a complaint about you already.
Today, there were 43 gang arrests, 3 gambling parlors raided, 6 sweatshops busted.
You're only meant to shake up the gang kids.
And now, an opening blow at the man who's been called the Godfather of Chinatown, Joey Tai. Mr. Tai, can you tell us if there is such a thing as the Chinese mafia? Mr. Tai.